Good morning, class. We're going to be doing the teaching a little bit different today. One, just to experiment with something totally different, teaching through video. Secondly, because still dealing with the chest cold and my voice is so-so. So instead of trying to get through this 4 times today, teaching and talking a lot, which I think I might lose my voice, I'm going to do it 1 time through this teaching. So today we're going to talk about justice and compassion. We're going to continue with justice and compassion based off of Matthew 25, the scripture we read the other day for good questioning habits. So as we talk about justice and compassion today, I want to start and dive into Matthew 25, and I'm going to summarize this just so that we can move along into the teaching. First of all, we get this image of the Son of Man, or Jesus, and he is coming back, and all of his angels on this majestic throne. It says all the nations are gathered to him. So this is all people are gathered in front of him. And then it goes into this analogy, and it says that he will separate them from each other just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on this right side and put the goats on his left side. This is not a sheep, this is a reindeer, but he was talking about sheep and goats, so I figured I would just bring out the pooping reindeer. So, sheep and goats, moving on. Why does he use sheep and goats? Well, it's actually used in the Old Testament as well. Out of Ezekiel chapter 34, we see that this same analogy has been used. So it's something that they would have understood as the sheep and the goat, this separation of one is better than the other. Basically, the idea of the sheep and the goats is that when Palestinian shepherds would gather together their flock at night, the goats could not exist well on their own, and they needed to be cared for a lot more, where sheep could graze in the open air, and it was easier for them to sustain life. The next thing is they had more of a valuable commodity in sheep, because sheep not only had the meat and the milk, but they also had the wool, which was very valuable. Goats did not have this. So it was understood that sheep were more valuable and more precious, and goats were not as valuable and not as precious. That's why he used it. Moving on, we see that Jesus' idea of justice and compassion, he talks about himself as a king. And he first talks to the righteous, the sheep, the valuable, and he says, now you can come and claim your inheritance. And the reason you can claim your inheritance is because I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was a stranger, I was unclothed, I was sick, I was in prison, and you came and you cared for me. You cared for me when I had these needs. And of course the righteous, the sheep say, well, no, we didn't, King. I don't remember actually doing any of these things. And he says, no, yeah, it wasn't for me, but whatever you did for someone overlooked or ignored, whatever you did for the least of these in my kingdom, my children, you actually did for me. In other words, he's taking this high status of the king, the power that's separated and should have all of these things cared for, and saying, no, it's not just about me and what I have, but I am actually elevating the least of these that are uncared for. When you do these things, you do these for me. And the king in this story is Jesus. So Jesus is saying, whatever you have done for the least of these, you are actually doing them for me. And then he goes to the goats and the ones that were unrighteous, that did not abide by this moral. And he basically says the same thing. I was thirsty, I was hungry, I was sick, I was in need, and you didn't come to my aid. You didn't help me. And they, of course, are like, wait, hold on, we didn't see you in need. We didn't know that you needed these things. How are we supposed to care for you? And he likewise says the same thing. And he says, yeah, I'm up here. I know I've got my status, but the least of these, they mattered just as much. And you did not care for those who were overlooked and ignored. So this is Jesus' idea of justice and compassion. It's not the rich and the wealthy and caring for those that have the higher status that really don't need to be cared for. But when you care for these that are overlooked and ignored, you have done something righteous. You have done something right. So as idea of justice and compassion, I want to give a quick imagery and a teaching based off the image of Lady Justice. The image of Lady Justice we see right here. Let's get in the camera. Yes, she is holding a scale. So let's move to the board and let me do a little teaching on this as the scale. Okay, we're to my beautiful artistic rendering of a scale. And this is a way that we're going to talk about Jesus' justice. The definition of justice that we learned is bringing life back into balance. So in this scale, we can see that things are out of balance. This one is weighted down this side, and this side has less. So we take this is the people that have more. This is the wealthy. This would definitely be us over here. We have plenty, okay? And then this is the least of these, if you will, the overlooked and ignored that we just talked about on this side. Now the only way for this scale to balance is what? Well, we actually have to take these items that are in this one, let's say that it's just like overflowing with plenty, and this has like nothing. We actually have to take and give to this in order for the scale to balance back out. Now, if I'm going to be honest, this can be scary. If I think about having to give up my creature comforts, my things that I want in life in order to make this balance, it's not something that is easy. I don't know that I want to give up even the things that I don't have. Do I want to give up some of my nice clothing, my shoes? Do I want to give up my car? Do I want to give up even to go to a lesser home? Do I want to give up some of my money that may be for the movie that I want to go see, that maybe I like to go out and eat sometimes, maybe a big screen TV, which I would actually like. If I have to give up some of these things in order to allow other people to have, I don't like this. But this is a sense of justice. Injustice, it's out of balance. The life is out of balance. Justice is moving it back into balance. And if you remember the scale from earlier this year, where God created, and God created with an intention of everything being in a balance, and let's see if we can move right here, intention of being balanced, and then there was the fall, and we're down here, and instead of it being a straight line, we're up and down, up and down. We are constantly out of balance. And this is the problem. So in other words, the scary thing is we have to make justice happen, we have to bring things back into balance. Okay? Now what I want you to do now, I want you to go to your group page on My Big Campus. My Big Campus, click on discussions, and you'll find a new discussion labeled Justice and Compassion. I want you to respond to the question. So you're going to My Big Campus, discussion to Justice and Compassion, and respond to the question. Pause this video right now, and then come back to it in just a moment. Okay, we're back. Thanks for commenting on the justice side of the question and the injustices in our world. I want to quickly, very, very quickly, keep moving through this, talk about compassion. Our definition for compassion is a care that moves one to action. And I want to say it this way. Often compassion, the definition is actually a sympathetic pity for sufferings. But when we think of pity, we often think of this, someone to pity someone, they are beneath us and they were lower than us. But in Matthew 25, we've learned that Jesus-like compassion is not that, because he was the king, but he's saying, oh, but what you do for the least of these, you have done for me. In other words, we're equal. If the fallen world is in balance, if it's just, then those who are kings do not consider themselves separated from those who are the least of these. So, the way we define pity may not be the best word to use for our definition of compassion, which is why it's not in our definition. Jesus-like compassion is not about being greater or lesser. Even a few chapters earlier than Matthew 25, Jesus is speaking about our problems of inequality, this injustice, this imbalance, and he says, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. In other words, Jesus is recognizing injustice. He is calling out the imbalance of our world. Jesus-like compassion has more to do with mutual respect and understanding. Jesus-like compassion, it's not about being better or being worse than another person. No, the Jesus-like compassion is about a heartfelt care that stirs us, that unsettles us, that moves us towards action. So a Jesus-like compassion is a care that moves us to action. So now I want you to go back to the discussion thread on My Big Campus. First, if I have responded to one of your earlier comments of injustice, make sure that you respond back to that question. So that's number one. Second, though, I want you to look up a quote of compassion that has to do somewhat with our definition, a care that moves one to action. And in your same posting, I want you to respond to your earlier post by posting in your quote that has to do with compassion. And then return right back here and we will wrap it up. So pause the video now. Okay, well done. You've made it through the first teaching video. If we do this again, hopefully I will get better at it. Hopefully it was good and informative. And my ultimate hope is that you learned something about not just justice and compassion, but a Jesus-like justice and a Jesus-like compassion. That justice is to bring things back into balance, and a Jesus-like compassion is a care that moves one to action. If we look back at the Matthew 25:40, it is this idea that whatever you have done for someone overlooked or ignored, the least of these, and not just those who are in a high class, a high status, but this sense of equality, that you have done these for me, that you have done these for Jesus. So now that you are done, congratulations. Go back and see me, and I will tell you what else you need to do to finish up the class today. So thank you very much, and come and talk to me. I'll tell you what's next. All right, bye.